I am in camp with you that they have to prove it.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid right now, brother.
I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid. I'm going off stats.
What's good? Logan Murdoch here, Raja Bell. We are here for another edition of Real or Fake, LA Clippers edition. And you know our history with the LA Clippers, and you know how we feel. Let's get right to it. Biggest strength. I'm going to go offense, particularly Paul George, who has had spurts of an MVP season. He's been balling out of control. Typical Paul George regular season vibes, out here balling. It makes you talk yourself into maybe he could do this in the postseason.
I'm going to go to just the opposite side of the ball and say their ability to lock down your two best players with both Kawhi and Paul George, who are both elite level defenders, and they could guard anywhere from the 1 to the 4. And so you name it, if you have two bosses on offense, those two can get that covered up. So that's going to be their biggest strength. I too agree that offense is their strength, but defensively, they've got the chops and the pieces, at least on paper, to be able to lock down two premier players.
Yeah, that's good in theory. Now let's go to their biggest weakness. You go ahead and say first.
Their biggest weakness for me is going to be said individual's ability in the playoffs to get those buckets over and over again in what seems to be mostly ISO situations. It's the way Kawhi usually likes to play in the playoffs. Paul George is also a guy who likes to go ISO in the playoffs. And so that's going to be a weakness for me. Whether or not they can consistently get into offense to let other guys eat, or whether or not those two can consistently cook their matchup and create for other people, without a whole ton of stuff being run.
My biggest weakness for the Clippers is the same biggest weakness that I've always had for the Clippers: the lack of consistency. There's always the time of the year, and it's always every Clippers season goes in spurts for me. It is the beginning of the season. It's particularly, I'm talking about when PG and Kawhi have been on the team. Beginning of the season, a lot of hype. Oh my goodness, the Clippers are going to do great. Then they start feeling themselves, and then the load management starts happening. They start feeling themselves. They go on a dip. They start losing. And then everyone still, kind of says, oh, you better watch out for the Clippers. You better watch out for the Clippers. You better watch out for the Clippers. They're a good team. And then they fade in the postseason. But they always stick their chest out and have an overall attitude like they've done something. I'm going to need them to do something. Consistency is a big key for me.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with consistency.
You're okay with that? Are you good with
that? I am actually good with that. But I think it's along the same vein of what I'm talking about, like consistently being able to go out there, whatever it is, whether we're talking about offensive or defensively, and doing your job is ultimately what separates champions from non-champions. So I agree.
Let's go to most important role player. Let me check that. The Raja Bell Memorial Award for most important role player. I'm going to go first on this one. Rajon Rondo, playoff Rondo. We know the truth is in the pudding. We know that he goes to another level when it comes to the postseason. And for many years, dating before Kawhi and PG have been on the team, they've needed a consistent presence that everyone respects. And walking into the door, Rajon Rondo commands that respect. And somehow he turns into a different player in the postseason. He turns into like Reggie Miller from 3-point range in the postseason. We saw that last year against when he was on the Lakers. So I'm going to go Rajon Rondo as most important role player for the Clippers.
I'm not mad at that. They were missing that last year, but I'm going to take a flyer and say Serge Ibaka. He has a presence on the floor. He's championship level. He's played in a ton of battles in the playoffs. His ability to kind of stretch the floor, at that 5 position and create the space that the other two need to be able to get into those ISO situations and really, give Kawhi the freedom to get down there on that mid block where he likes to do a lot of work, give Paul George the opportunities. And then defensively, he's a rim presence. So I think Serge Ibaka is going to be critical. His health is going to play a major factor in whether they have legs in the playoffs or not.
That's a good call. Now, this is really just the LA Clippers award right now that we're going to go into. This is just defines their season. We talk about this every year, I think, for the last decade since Lob City. A little segment we like to call Real or Fake. They are fake until proven otherwise. And that is that is an eternity until, this is just in general. Until they win a chip, they are fake. They have the talent. They're probably the most talented team in the league, if not the second most behind Brooklyn. But they haven't shown up. Every year it's the same thing. Oh, Clippers this, Clippers that, Clippers this, Clippers that. What happens, Raja? Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Nothing happens.
I'm going to say that they are contenders, Logan. They are for real. And they got two things working for them aside from all the talent you just talked about. It's wide open right now. I don't know what we got in the Lakers. Don't know what that health situation looks like. Anything else in the Western Conference, I don't know that you just pencil that in for a championship. So the Clippers are very well-rounded. They're excellent both offensively and defensively. And I'd say the same argument for the Eastern Conference, except for maybe Brooklyn as a team that I would be afraid of, but Brooklyn's got real huge flaws defensively. I talk about it all the time. So I think the Clippers are real ones. I think they have an opportunity. Now, I am in camp with you that they have to prove it.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid right now, brother.
I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid. I'm going off stats, man. I'm going off what I'm looking at on paper. I'm going off teams that check the boxes that you need to check. And they've got stupid amount of talent, and they are right there in terms of offensive and defensive ability and supported numbers throughout a season. So I got to put them in the real one conversation. They got star power. We talked about, some teams in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference, that being an Achilles heel, not having the star power. They have that. I think they're for real.